You're listening to The Dealmaker's Edge with AY Strauss, diving deep into stories behind commercial real estate leaders. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Dealmaker's Edge. Today, we are very happy to be joined by Chris Okada, CEO of Okada Company, a privately held, full-service commercial real estate brokerage and investment firm based in New York City. To date, Okada Company has completed more than $1.5 billion of commercial real estate sales and leasing transactions. Chris is also the founder of the Okada Acquisition Company, which focuses on acquiring prime office, retail, and multifamily properties in the Midtown and Midtown South submarkets of Manhattan. And his insights have been featured in major publications like the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, Crain's, and he's also the author of From Fear to Fortune, which is a special industry report on the decline and resulting opportunities in post-pandemic New York City real estate. Chris, I go way back with you. You've got tremendous energy and you're an eternal optimist and a wonderful deal maker. We're pumped you're on and thank you for making the time.
Thank you so much, Aaron, for having me. Super excited to share my insights, what I've learned, and the pluses and the minuses of being a commercial real estate professional. Obviously, you see everything on the legal side. There's some beautiful and there's some ugly in everything that we do, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, that's a good analogy. It's a good analogy for life almost, really. It's a good and bad together mixed in. And I know you've got a really great headspace about how you approach deal making and your philosophy and so on, which we're definitely going to jump into. But maybe for our listeners, you can sort of take a very, very high level macro view of how you got started. I know your father was key in your life and introducing you to the business. Maybe you can give people just an overview of your earliest stages in commercial real estate.
Wonderful. So my name is Chris Okada, CEO of Okada Company. We are a commercial brokerage and investment company. Just like Aaron said, we represent 49 buildings and 2.7 million square feet. A lot of this, I would say 90% of this is third-party landlord representative as a leasing agent. And we did acquire about $150 million of real estate, all pretty much in the recovery of the 2008 financial crisis. And I started this company. This is our 17th year. I started with $30,000 and turned that into over $1.5 billion of sales. And in Midtown Manhattan, $1.5 billion over 17 years. That's not a lot, so I do have friends and peers that have done 5, 10, 20, $30 billion of sales. So, we're still on the growth trajectory, but super excited to share with you. And I think your first question was, how did I get started? Commercial real estate, especially office and retail, is such a niche part of the real estate industry. And a lot of people don't necessarily get involved unless they know someone or a family member, introduced it to them. And for me, that was my father. He was in New York City leasing and capital markets from 1969. He passed away in 2014, so that was 9 years ago today. But he definitely was the gentleman and the person and the mentor who brought me into commercial real estate. And, I went to school and studied finance. I went to Bentley College or Bentley University today, but I graduated in the State University of New York at Albany, upstate New York. And I studied business and I studied finance, but ultimately I knew that my backup was always going to be real estate. So for those of you that are young and you're trying to find your way through the world, I would like to say pretty much for this generation, from 22 years old after college graduation, really discovering who you are for your first 6 years, being 28 or 29 and not really understanding where you are and all kinds of social pressures. It's very different in 2023. But I graduated in 2002. And for us, that was, for those of you that remember that time, that was shortly after 9/11. So not only was it the terrorist attacks on New York City, the World Trade Center, it shot us into a recession. So there was the end of the tech boom of which was around 98. That really 2002 was the bottom of that entire cycle. 2001, September, and 6 months later, I graduated. So with that said, no one was hiring. I couldn't get an interview even because first year straight out of college, financial analyst, financial advisory, whatever it is in finance, they were letting go of the youngest and the least senior. So every conversation I had with people was, I'm so sorry, Chris, we just fired 10,000 frontliners as far as finance is concerned. So my father said, get your real estate license. And just like that, I entered the world of real estate. I still had other ambitions, though. I did have ambitions. I love music. Music, a lot of people don't know this in real estate in our world, but I loved music, thought I wanted to get into music more on the production side and the publishing side. So while I was doing real estate, I didn't necessarily throw 100% of who I was into real estate. It was more of a let's make money situation. And I also was very interested in the business of fashion and the B2C sort of business model where you can create something and people outside are wearing it. And there's an enlightenment about sharing your design and watching people outside wear it. And that was the ideal scenario for fashion. And I went into both industries, music, and I went into fashion during my first few years of real estate. So I was in and out of real estate for those 2 years or 3 years. And what I learned in fashion was that there was money being made, but it wasn't as widespread. The industry itself, I felt, was very competitive, similar to real estate, but also very judgmental on the exterior, very opinionated. And I didn't really enjoy that aspect of lots of critiques of what you're wearing. Whereas in business and in finance and real estate, you'll meet billionaires that are wearing sweatpants. And really the accomplishment of business has very little to do with what you're wearing. Whereas the fashion world, it didn't matter if you were $1 million producer, if you didn't look a certain way, the receptionist was more valued than you. In the music industry, I loved it and the people were incredible and people very earthy, down, humble people. They're there for their passions, but there wasn't money. And the one complaint everyone complained about was the lack of their financial strength or resources. And these were people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s.
Sure.
Uh,
And if I can ask you from there, one of the things I think you've done at a very high level, unlike a lot of other folks in the brokerage space who have built their own shops is, and maybe it's that fashion background, you have a tremendous sense. Well, style personally, I can say as a friend, you're great. You understand the exterior, but you've also become a fabulous marketer. You've really built a great brand. People build an emotional connection with brands. And I think you stand above on how you leverage social media, how you build your website, build your team, build your firm, you know how to market properties. So it seems like that sort of bled through. Maybe you could talk a little bit about how you use that sense and your worldliness, frankly, in other industries to leverage building your own brand essentially from scratch.
Yeah, I think it was an evolution. Our first website and our first sort of marketing foray was all ground up, very much guerrilla marketing. Again, we started the company with $30,000. By the way, investing in yourself, whether it's a course, whether it's books, whether it's in your own company, I feel that was one of the best decisions I have ever made financially. And we're going to get into the challenges of any decision because you only think of the upside and you only think of the blessings, but you don't think about the burdens. But yeah, so with marketing and branding, it's absolutely really important. Even though my family was in the industry since 1969 and my father was pretty well known amongst the commercial leasing industry, we wanted to do something very different. Whereas he was Class A office, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 global brands that he represented. We represented smaller domestic companies and we were focused more on volume. So it was definitely a different avatar that we were targeting. It was a different mindset. It was more entrepreneurial as far as the tenants and the companies that we were working with. It was ground up tech companies, startups. It was fashion companies that had a very strict budget and were in the fashion district for a long time. I'd like to say that all of the branding and all of the marketing and the social media, that really came about because of curiosity. I always wanted to enhance our visibility. So that's the forefront of everything that we do. How many eyeballs can we get on a single property? How many eyeballs can we get on our website? How many eyeballs can we get on our social media or my social media? That is the marketing plan. How can they see whatever it is that we're promoting and then go from there? And we go far off and far away from actual traditional marketing just to get more eyeballs. It's an investment of time. It's an investment of money. But I do think that there's certainly a creative aspect that is brought into marketing and business in general. For me, I actually, for social media purposes, I went to the School of Visual Arts one summer and I took a Adobe Premiere intensive. It's not that I do any editing, but I have to understand the basics of what does editing any piece of content, what goes into it, and what goes into the audio, what goes into the visual. And so I did invest probably, it was like 3-4 weekends of a Saturday morning. I think it was like from 9 to 12 for 3 to 4 weeks in a row, and really try to dig into that because I did want to grow our social media presence. And in commercial real estate, I think that we do have a great social media presence, but compared to a lot of the other marketers in the world who post content daily and have a calendar and have a strategy and have a team behind it, I give myself a 5 out of 10. I give myself a C minus.
But a 5 with such a unique brand that you've built, which is very strong, and a boutique firm. I mean, we're also small as compared to the big boys in massive institutional shops, but there's a demand for that curated experience. And you really told your story really, really well. So if you give yourself a 5, I could definitely give you a higher score, at least to the outside world. People are always hardest on their own. They're their own, their hardest self-critic, so to speak. But Chris, maybe we can go now to more the real estate market generally. I've known you for a really long time. You're a wonderful deal maker. You're very optimistic. You've seen a lot of twists and turns in commercial real estate in New York City specifically. The mood now is difficult, I guess you can call it, but there's also a lot of historic opportunity. Maybe you can sort of frame the market from different perspectives, right? Because if you read one news report, the sky is falling, and if you talk to somebody else, the market's incredibly opportunistic. There's a lot of moving pieces, obviously, but maybe you can talk us through your view and some of the client conversations you're having just to get
Sure.
people's pulse on what's happening in New York generally.
Yeah, great question. So our world is office and retail. And post pandemic, work from home, that is the front page news about office utilization. It's not wrong. I would like to say that they probably enhance it to make it more clickbaity, if you will. But the truth of the matter is that for any given office or any property, the peak utilization is around 65%, maybe 75%. That's on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It drops pretty significantly on a Friday. If you go into any Class A or Class B office building in Midtown Manhattan on a Friday, Thursday is really kind of the new Friday as far as the workforce is concerned. And utility drops to around 30%. So that means 70% of the workers are not showing up on Friday. I do hope that there is a slight increase in these statistics over the next 12 to 24 months. However, The truth of the matter is that the world will be changed, has changed forever, and is changed forever as far as remote work, work from home. And there are whole companies, as far as technology is concerned, that are fully remote and they have no real plan. And their company is based upon a fully remote strategy as far as the workforce is concerned. With that said, I do feel that office assets and real estate assets here in New York City and around the world is constantly evolving. And this is part of the evolution and growing. The term growth pains really talks about evolution. Whereas everything in the fashion district, Chelsea, Soho, used to once upon a time be all manufacturing. But manufacturing left local and went overseas. And during that transition, then a lot of the companies grew in the 80s and 90s and the 2000s. So manufacturers felt a tremendous amount of pain from the 70s to today. And now there's virtually no local manufacturers, very little.
I was going to say on that evolution, what type of tenants are you seeing taking space?
That's a great
today?
question.
Yeah.
The people that are signing leases, there are definitely technology companies that do require presence. There are healthcare related, beauty related, those kinds of tenants are still certainly in the market. And anything gearing towards the gig economy and sort of the remote work economy is sort of in recovery. And we are seeing that. So co-working companies are now at 70% occupancy with good rates. Will it get to 100% with good rates? That's to be discussed and to be seen. But certainly they are over the break-even parts. We are definitely seeing architectural firms, PR companies, and there's always a general New York City buzz as far as entrepreneurs seeking space and trying to do a startup. We have leases with AI companies that do have 60 people, but they are only planning on having space at any given time for 25 people. So a revolving hotel desking sort of strategy. So yes, tech, services, healthcare, those are probably here to stay. However, the utilization of the space is going to be is less.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about the client conversations.
Sure.
Is there an appetite for people to come in and sort of pounce on New York City today? I know that's been a cloud brewing for a while, but there is always contrarian plays to make. Are you talking with clients who say, get me in, find the value now, it's a historic opportunity? And are you talking to owners who say, listen, I'm going to have to sell that in there because debt is maturing or whatever the story may be? So
Yeah,
curious to hear the tale of two cities within New York City a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that for owners, they have to look at their portfolio holistically. And it's important to take a zoom out on their entire portfolio. And I'll tell you a few conversations. One is some of their properties are doing very well if they have a well diversified portfolio of multifamily, retail, and let's say office. Some of the family offices that we're working with, their rent rolls for their apartment properties are higher than they ever have been. Whereas the office component of their entire portfolio is weaker than they've seen since 20 years plus. So because of that, there are certain strategies that we help them with on their weak side, which is maybe the vacancies and that sort of thing. They are very, very nervous. And this has been, the last 12 months have been very much an emotional roller coaster with all kinds of property owners, unless they are completely in free market multifamily or fully industrial. For those that have, just focused on free market multifamily and they have conservative debt levels, I believe they're less concerned than people that are fully in office, especially class C and class B office. That's for sure. So people are nervous.
Absolutely. And what about, you've been growing your team too? I saw you just made some new hires even just a month ago. I'm sure people are hitting you up all the time to get on your calendar for coffee. Somebody's just graduating college or whatnot. What are you telling those people starting off in commercial real estate today? What type
Yeah.
of headspace? You've got a great energy to you. I'm not sure what you're telling yourself every day because I'm sure some days are wonderful and some days are very hard. As somebody who also runs their own firm, I experience the highs and lows constantly. Maybe you could talk a little bit about your headspace and then also how you're advising people just getting started in the industry.
So, just like every industry, there are periods of great growth and there's periods of great risk and decline. So, really, the headspace is really just trying to balance it all out. And I, as a businessman in this world, I really, if there's any one area of my life that is just all attention on that, then there's a deficit in other areas. And so really, really, really try my best, even at times where I really don't have mental bandwidth, really to enhance the other areas because I'm a workhorse. I love work. This is what I do. People know my whole life, even at home, I have to force myself to focus, put down the phone, stop staring and watch a movie with the family, or let's go shopping, or let's spend time together and just step away from the phone, step away from the emails, and step away from the planning and thinking. So that is in times of uncertainty, it's the best if you have children or if you focus on your family. I think that's an absolute blessing. And for families and some clients of ours, they turn off their phones for Shabbat, and that's the best time for that. Sunset or close to sunset on Fridays. And sometimes they're like, let me just keep the phone off all weekend and focus on my kids and watch what they want to watch and pay attention to their entertainment. Really going back to your question is to have a good familial life, I think is very important. If you don't have kids, then focus on your social life, which is amazing. And you're young and, you get to do that. So each aspect of our life, whether we're teenagers in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, there are other aspects that you should pay attention that will relieve or alleviate the stress. And the same goes for work. If home life is very challenging right now, the kids are going through a transition or your wife is upset, and this is normal for everyone. Maybe work is a wonderful place for you to live right now, just for the next week. Or maybe the gym is where you need to focus. And if you have a spiritual life, which I hope that you all sort of develop, maybe that is the place that you need to focus. Because at some point in time in your life, because life goes up, there's so many ups and downs. There may be a time where it's tough at home, tough at the office, and you're not feeling good. So you need your spiritual. Sometimes everything's going well, so your spiritual is weak. But that's where it's really important to really just take a step back and say, what areas of my life right now are out of whack? And let me shift a little bit of focus on that in order for me to be happy in general. And I think it's important to take a step back if you're not happy and to say, why am I not happy? I'm living my dream. I wanted the house. I wanted the wife. I wanted the kids. I wanted the company. I wanted the career. Why am I not happy? What is happening in my life? And once you do a self audit and then reverse engineer what it means to be happy for you, you just have to take massive action towards that. And I myself and anyone in the industry will go through sales slumps, will go through capital markets challenges, will be laid off. You may have your dream job, but you're in a toxic environment. It's really important to take a step back and try to reverse engineer and try to create a bridge of what you feel you need to be happy. And that goes for young people, going back to your original question about for younger associates and younger people getting into real estate or commercial real estate. You have to have a mentor. You have to have someone that says, no, that's not how you write this email. This is how you address the email. That's not how when you take a client out, you lose the ego. You have to lose the ego because when I was younger, I had certain levels of success, but that meant nothing to a gentleman that has been working 40 years, has survived 8 economic cycles, is worth $250 million. My $100,000 wins is not comparable to that. So have more humility. But it's hard to do that because managers and bosses, especially if you have associates 35 years and younger, you're a continuation of their family, of how they were brought up. So it's really juggling all that. But for young people, you got to have a mentor. Even people my age. My father was a mentor. He passed away. I had another wonderful mentor who was not in real estate, but owned multiple businesses. And he would always guide me. And he was a mentor that would tell me, Chris, these are your weak spots as far as being an entrepreneur in general, whether it's, C-suite executives, whether it's finance, whether it's marketing, whether it's our structure. So I personally need someone that is older, that has done it for me. And they could even be younger, actually, but then has a certain skill set, whether it's an entrepreneur that exited 5 companies at 10-figure numbers or 8-figure numbers or 9-figure, whatever it is, and understands that's a part of equity creation of your company. Or a landlord that owns and has lost everything, but still is a billionaire and never gives up, versus someone else, maybe a spiritual leader or whatever it is that you want to enhance in your life, including maybe if you want to focus on your health, because now we're in our 40s. It's different than our 30s, different than our 20s. I used to be able to get away with having 3 slices of pizza at 2 a.m. And then I would just have to run it off during the weekend and run 3-4 miles. Now it's hard, now I can't even have pizza. I don't even want pizza. And really, so that's what I suggest. You got to have a mentor. You have to have an OG. In every movie, whether Star Wars or whatever, there's a board of advisors that sit around and they say, I think you need to work on your HR and have a strategy, whatever it may be. I think for a mentor, this is how you raise capital for your firm, for your projects. For another guy, he may say, hey, we hired, 300 people in the last 6 months. This is what we did. And if you have those people, I think it's great. So that's my number one advice for young people and people in general.
Great. Well, Chris, I've really enjoyed hanging out with you here. I'm sure our listeners learned a ton. I'm always learning from you when we speak. Really want to thank you again for making the time. And
Sure.
Can't wait to share this conversation with lots of people who are going to learn a lot from it. And again, just really want to thank you again for being on.
Okay, absolutely. That was very quick. It's funny. I was like, is this a 20-minute thing, a 40-minute?
Yeah, I think we hit a good stride. It's about 35 minutes. And I think maybe a follow-up will be due in the next 6 months or so to watch the market and so on. But I guess we'll cut it here. But Chris, you're the man. I think
Thank you
so.
so much,
You're doing
Aaron.
great. And to be continued.
Yeah. And we'll jump on a call for that other thing at 3:00 if you guys are free.
Perfect. Thank you for joining the Dealmaker's Edge. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Give us a 5-star rating so more people can follow the conversation.